بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو على ما نبيه علينا من النعم الكثيرة الظاهرة والباطنة وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه أما بعد. By the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, all praise belongs to Allah, the one that there's none that has the right to be worshipped except Him, who has bestowed upon us blessings that are numerous, those blessings that are outward and inward, and I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's alone, without having any partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad ibn Abdullah, that He is His servant and His messenger. May the peace and salutations of Allah be upon him and his family and his companions, and upon all those who follow upon his guidance to the establishment of the last day. To proceed, إخوان, فنواصل معكم في الاستفادة مع فضيلة الإمام العلامة الشيخ أبو عبد الله محمد بن صالح العثيمين رحمه الله تعالى. So we continue benefiting from, deriving knowledge from the great Imam al-Allama Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen رحمه الله تعالى شرحا على متن عقيدة الواسطية لابن تيمية رحمه الله تعالى, as he's commenting and explaining the book Aqeedatu al-Waasitiyyah, the belief that's in the middle, that has been authored by Ibn Taymiyyah رحمه الله تعالى. No.
لكنه في أواخر العصر، عصر الصحابة، ثم ظهرت بعد ذلك بدعة الإرجاء.
He says, and then after that came along the innovation of al-irja. The innovation of al-irja.
الإرجاء وأدركت زمن كثير من التابعين.
And this innovation of al-irja, translators note, the innovation of the group al-murji'ah. This innovation here, it came on the scene, it approached, it came about, and it reached many of the tabi'un, the generation that came after the companions.
وش الإرجاء؟
He says, so what is irja?
الإرجاء الذين يقولون إنه لا تضر مع الإيمان معصية.
He says, what is irja? Al-irja, it is, they are those who say that as long as the person believes in Allah, as long as he has belief, he has iman in Allah, then sin and transgression does not harm him.
أنت مؤمن؟ نعم. محمد انتبه. أنت مؤمن؟ يقول نعم. يقول لا يضرك المعصية. مع الإيمان لا تضر المعصية.
He says, and then he calls upon one of the young children whose name was Muhammad. He says, Muhammad, pay attention here. He says, you are a believer. Someone says, for example, you are a believer. They say, yes. The murji'ah, they say, as long as the person has belief in Allah, then sin does not harm as long as the person has belief.
تزني.
You can commit illegal relations.
تسرق. تشرب الخمر. تقتل. ما في شيء.
You can commit illegal relations, according to them. You can steal and rob. You can drink intoxications. You can murder and kill. As long as you have iman, as long as you believe in Allah, then these sins don't harm a person's belief. They say as long as the person believes, he has complete belief in Allah, then the person, if he does all of the sins, they will never harm his belief.
هؤلاء خرجوا لمقابلة الخوارج.
These individuals here, translators note, talking about the murji'ah. The murji'ah. They came on the scene in opposition of the khawarij. They came as an opposition of the khawarij.
كيف البدعة تجر إلى بدعة.
He says, you see how an innovation can lead to innovation.
خرجوا لمقابلة الخوارج.
So these murji'ah, they came on the scene in opposition of the Khawarij.
الخوارج ماذا يقولون؟
So what do the Khawarij, what do they say?
يقولون الكبيرة تخرج الإنسان من الإيمان.
The Khawarij, they say that a major sin removes a person from having belief.
إذا زنى الإنسان فهو كافر يستباح دمه وماله.
The Khawarij, they say, if a believer falls into illegal relations, then he becomes a disbeliever and his blood becomes lawful.
إذا سرق فهو كافر.
If the person commits sin, if the person steals or he robs, then he becomes a disbeliever. This translator's note is according to the Khawarij. According to the Khawarij.
يستباح دمه وماله. هذا من الخوارج.
So he says, who are these? Which group are we talking about here? Who are they? And you hear the students say, the Khawarij.
هؤلاء أرادوا أن يقابلوهم ببدعة. قالوا أبدا. إذا كان مؤمنا بالله ورسوله واليوم الآخر وأصول الإيمان الستة فليعمل ما شاء.
So they believe if the person, he believes in Allah and the Messenger of Allah and the last day, that he can do whatever he wants to do, meaning from sin.
كل المعاصي وإن كبرت ما عدا الكفر والشرك فإنها لا تنقص الإيمان فضلا عن تخرج منه.
So these individuals, the Khawarij, they believe whatever the sin is, as long as it's not shirk and disbelief, no matter what the sin is, the person's belief is not lessened and reduced on account of falling into a sin.
فالإنسان مؤمن كامل الإيمان.
So they believe the person, if he has complete iman in Allah Ta'ala.
فجاء قوم من الأذكياء والله أعلم هل هم أذكياء أم لا.
And then a group comes on the scene in opposition of this Khawarij. He says, in this group, they were intelligent. He says, Allah knows best. Were they azkiya or not? He says, Allah knows best. Were they purified or not?
هم أذكياء لكن الله أعلم هل هم أذكياء أو لا.
He says, they were intelligent, yes. They had comprehension, they were intelligent. But only Allah knows, were they pure? Did they have pure intentions or no?
قالوا نجمع بين القولين.
This group comes and they say, let's put together both positions.
ونقول اللي يفعل الكبيرة ليس بمؤمن كما قال المرجئة.
He says, so this another group comes, translator's note, meaning after the Khawarij and after the Murji'ah, another group comes. And they were intelligent, but only Allah knows best, are they purified or not? Do they have pure intentions or no? This other group, they say, we're going to pit together both positions, the positions of the Khawarij and the Murji'ah. They say we're not going to say that a person who falls into a major sin, that if a person commits a major sin, that he is no longer a believer, like the Murji'ah say.
وليس بكافر كما قال الخوارج.
Nor are we going to say that the person who falls into a major sin, that he is a disbeliever, as the Khawarij say. We're not going to say this, nor we're going to say that.
بل هو في منزلة بين منزلتين.
They say, but rather we believe this person is not a believer, nor is he a disbeliever. He's not a believer like the Murji'ah say, and he's not a disbeliever like the Khawarij say. But rather we believe, translators note, talking about this third group of innovation. We believe that he is in a position between both positions. He is in a status, a level, between the level that the Khawarij say and between the level that the Murji'ah say.
كرجل سافر من عنيزة إلى الرياض.
Like if a person wants to travel from Unayza to Riyadh.
نعم فصار في أثناء الطريق.
And then he becomes in the middle of the path, in the middle of the road.
وش نقول له؟
What are we going to say about him? He traveled from Unayza to Riyadh. Then he gets into the middle of the destination. Where will he say he's at?
لا في الرياض ولا في عنيزة.
We would say he's not in Riyadh and he's not in Unayza.
بل في منزلة بين منزلتين.
But rather he's in a place between both places, between Unayza and between Riyadh.
هم قالوا هكذا.
These individuals, they say similarly.
قالوا لا نقول فاعل الكبيرة كافر ولا مؤمن كامل الإيمان.
They say, we're not going to say that the Muslim who falls into a major sin, he's a believer, nor are we going to say he's a disbeliever.
في منزلة بين منزلتين.
But we say he's in a position, a status, a level between both positions.
طيب وماذا تصنعون به في الآخرة؟
So the question is, what do they say about this individual in the hereafter? Where is his abode in the hereafter?
كان نقول مخلد في النار.
They say, we believe he's in the hellfire for eternity.
يوافقون الخوارج ولا لا؟
So Sheikh Uthaymeen says, so you see, do they agree with the Khawarij or not? And then the student says, yes, Sheikh, they agree with the Khawarij.
يوافقونه في الآخرة.
They agree with the Khawarij in the hereafter.
في الدنيا يخالفونه.
But regarding what the Khawarij believe in this life, they oppose the Khawarij in this life.
ظهرت هذه البدعة وانتشرت.
So this innovation became prevalent. It became prevalent and it became widespread.
ثم جاءت بدعة الظلمة والجهمة وهي بدعة جهم بن صفوان.
And then after this innovation, there came another oppression and another innovation. And this innovation was the innovation of a man whose name was Safwan or Jahm ibn Safwan.
الجهمية جاءت هذه البدعة لا تتعلق بمسألة الأسماء والدين.
So this other group who were the followers of Jahm ibn Safwan, this innovation here is not connected to the names and attributes of Allah.
مؤمن ولا كافر ولا فاسق ولا منزلة
It is not connected to, is the person who does this a believer, is he a disbeliever, or is he in a place between the two places?
منزلتين لا تتعلق بذات الخالق.
But rather, their innovation is connected to the entity of the Creator itself, the essence of Al-Khaliq, the Creator.
شوف كيف وصلوا تدرجت البدع.
He says, you see how innovation, it develops. It becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. It develops.
فهرة في صدر الإسلام حتى وصلوا إلى الخالق جل وعلا.
So the innovation, it starts at one level and then it reaches a level and now it's talking about the Creator.
وجعلوا الخالق بمنزلة جثة يشرحونها كما شاءوا.
So they look at the Creator in a way that they can perceive Him in any manner that they wish.
فيكون هذا ثابت لله وهذا غير ثابت.
So they say this is established for Allah and this over here is not established for Allah.
هذا يقبل العقل أن يتصف الله به وهذا لا يقبل العقل أن يتصف به.
They say this description here, the mind can understand that, but this one over here, the mind doesn't understand that.
فجاءت بدعة الجهمية والمعتزلة وهكذا.
So then the innovation of Al-Jahmiyyah and then the innovation of ماذا? He mentioned another group after that, إخوان.
الرياض لكن في الدنيا المسألتين لا ينتصب به. فجاءت بدعة الجهمية والمعتزلة وهكذا.
And then there came the innovation of Al-Jahmiyyah wal-Mu'tazila came after that also.
فانقسموا في أسماء الله وصفاته إلى أقسام متعددة.
So then, with regards to Allah's names and attributes, the people were divided into many fractions and many groups.
قسم قالوا لا يجوز أبدا أن نصف الله لا بوجود ولا بعدم.
There was a group of mankind with regards to the names and attributes of Allah, and this group, they said, it is not allowed that we describe Allah, that we say Allah exists, or we don't say that Allah does not exist. This is not allowed, and that is not allowed. That's one of the groups.
لا نصف الله لا بوجود ولا عدم.
And then he said it a second time. This group said it is not permissible for us to describe Allah. We don't say Allah is mawjood, He exists, nor do we say He does not exist. It is not allowed. Both positions are not allowed. That's one group.
لا تقل موجود ولا معدوم.
We don't say Allah exists, nor do we say Allah does not exist.
طيب وش يصير؟
So he says, so what do you say about Allah?
قال لا تقول لا موجود ولا معدوم.
So they're saying that Allah does not exist, and they're also saying Allah does not exist. He is not in existence, and He is not the opposite. He is in not existence.
قاتلكم الله أين نذهب؟
So the Shaykh says, قاتلهم Allah. May Allah do away with them. Then what do you say about Allah?
قال إن قلت موجود شبهته بالموجودات.
They say, if you say Allah exists, then you're likening Him to those things that exist.
صار مثل زيد وعمر الموجودين.
So they say, if you say He exists, then He is like Zayd and Amr, or those who are present.
وإن قلت معدوم شبهته بالمعدومات.
And if you say that Allah does not exist, then you're likening Him to those things that do not exist. Translator's note, here he's talking about those deviant groups. So this is the first group with regards to the names of Allah. They say, we don't say, this deviant group, they say, we do not say Allah exists, and we do not say Allah does not exist. They say, because if you say Allah exists, you're likening Him to those things that exist. And if you say Allah does not exist, you're likening Him to those things that do not exist.
مثل الإنسان قبل أن يخلق.
He says, they say, then He's like a person, or He's like a thing before He's created.
فلا مفر. قولوا لماذا أقول؟ قال قل.
So he says, you say to those people, then what do we say about Allah? If you believe Allah, you can't say He exists, and you can't say He does not exist, then we say to these individuals, then what do we say about Allah?
لا موجود ولا معدوم. نعم. طيب. قالوا شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية هذه القضية ممتنعة.
So Ibn Uthaymeen, he comes, rahimahullah ta'ala. So he says, this affair here that these people are upon, translator's note, saying that we do not say Allah exists, nor do we say Allah does not exist. Ibn Uthaymeen comes on the scene. He says, this issue here that they're upon is impossible.
مستحيلة. يعني مستحيل أن يكون الشيء لا موجودا ولا معدوما.
Shaykh al-Islam, he says, this is impossible. It is impossible for a thing to not exist, and it's impossible for a thing to exist and not to exist. It's impossible to have two opposites.
لماذا؟ لأن تقابل العدم والوجود تقابل نقيضين.
He says, because if the thing exists and you say, you have to say He does not exist, or if it does not exist and the opposite of not existence is existence. He says these two, they're opposites to one another. They cannot both exist at the same time. This is impossible.
تقابل نقيضين والنقيضان لا يجتمعان ولا يرتفعان.
So two things that are opposites to one another, they oppose one another, and they can never exist. They can never exist. And both of them can't be removed. They can never exist together. You can't have two opposites. Nor can you remove two opposites.
سلب وإيجاب لا يمكن أحدهما ولا بد أن يكون.
So he says that both of them not existing and they are in opposition of one another, this is impossible. It's a must for one of the two oppositions to exist.
فإذا قلتم إنه لا موجود ولا معدوم سلبتم عنه النقيضين وشبهتموه بماذا؟ بالممتنعات والوجود تقابل نقيضين. تقابل نقيضين والنقيضان لا يجتمعان ولا يرتفعان.
So two opposing entities, they cannot be joined together. They cannot exist together, nor can both of them be removed.
سلب وإيجاب لا يمكن أحدهما ولا بد أن يكون.
So one of them has to exist.
فإذا قلتم إنه لا موجود ولا معدوم سلبتم عنه النقيضين وشبهتموه بماذا؟ بالممتنعات المستحيلات.
He says, and if you say that He can't, according to that group, they say we can't say Allah exists and we don't say Allah does not exist. So he says this here is impossible. So in here, in this entity, you're likening Allah to those things that are impossible.
فنحن إن قلنا إنه موجود شبهناه بالموجودات أهون. الموجودات ممكنة موجودة. أو بالمعدومات شبهناه بالمعدوم ممكن أيضا.
So Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says, if they were to say that Allah doesn't exist, or if they were to say Allah exists, and this you're likening Allah to those things that exist, this would be better for them because this is possible. Or if they were to say you can't say Allah exists or Allah does not exist, and if you say Allah does not exist, you're likening him to those things that don't exist. He says this will be better than what they're saying because this is also possible, but what they're saying is impossible.
لكن بالشيء لا موجود ولا معدوم ممتنع كل عقول بني آدم تنكر هذا الشيء.
He says, however, what they're saying, we don't say Allah exists, and they say, nor do we say He does not exist. He says this ideology, the mind of all of the children of Adam is going to deny such a claim.
ولا تقبله.
And the mind is not going to accept this.
انتبه هؤلاء قالوا لا نقول لا موجود ولا معدوم.
He says, pay attention. This group, they come along and they say, with regards to Allah, we don't say Allah exists, nor do we say He does not exist.
قال جاءوا ناس آخرين.
He says, and then another group of people came on the scene.
قال لا صفه بالإثبات ولا تصفه بالنفي.
This other group that comes on the scene, they say, no, we don't agree with that first group. We describe Allah with those things He has affirmed, with affirmation. We describe Allah with affirmation, but we do not describe Allah with negation. That's another group. We describe Allah bil ithbat, with affirmation, but we do not describe Allah bin nafi, with negation.
صفه بالإثبات ولا تصفه قصدي صفه بالنفي صفه بالنفي ولا تصفه بالإثبات.
طيب, then he said it the opposite the second time. He says, rather, this group says we describe Allah with negation and we do not describe Allah with affirmation. The second time he said it in reverse.
يعني أنهم يجوزون أن تسلب عن الله سبحانه وتعالى الصفات لكن لا تثبت.
So they say, meaning that it is allowed to describe Allah Ta'ala with some attributes, but you do not describe Allah with affirmation.
يعني لا تقول هو حي وش أقول قل ليس بميت.
So what does this mean? He says, for example, they say, we don't say Allah is living, but we say He is not dead. So translators note. This second group of people, Shaykh Uthaymeen is explaining. They came on the scene and they say, we describe Allah with negation, but we don't describe Allah with affirmation. He says, for example, they say, we don't say Allah is living. We say He is not dead.
تقول حي لا تقول عليم وش أقول ليس بجاهل.
They say, we do not say Allah is all-knowing. We say that Allah is not ignorant. Translators note, once again, Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah is explaining the deviance and the misguidance of the different groups and ideologies.
وهكذا ليش؟ قال لو أثبتت له شيئا شبهته بالموجودات.
He says, why do they say this? They say, if we affirm for Allah things, then we are likening Him to those things that exist. If we say, this deviant group, you ask them, why do they say this? Why do you say this? They say, if we affirm for Allah things, then we're likening Allah bil mawjudat, to those things that exist, those things that are present.
لأن الشيء على زعمهم كل الأشياء الموجودة متشابهة.
They say, because they claim that things that exist, all of them are similar to one another. All the things that these individuals, once again, translator's note, he's explaining the misguidance and the falsehood of those deviant groups. We don't want no one to believe that these are the positions of Ahl Sunnah. He's still explaining the falsehood and the misguidance of those deviant groups. So if you say to this group, why do you not affirm things for Allah? They say, because if we affirm for Allah, we're likening Allah with those things that are present. Because they believe that everything that exists is similar to one another.
كل أشياء موجودة متشابهة.
They believe everything that exists متشابهة, resembles one another.
لا تثبت له شيئا وأما النفي فاملأ الدنيا كلها من النفي.
He says, so these individuals, they don't affirm anything for Allah. But with regards to negation, Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says, then the dunya is filled with things that are in negation.
مع أن الموجود في الكتاب والسنة في صفات الله الإثبات أكثر من النفي بكثير.
He says, however, with regards to looking at the Quran and Sunnah, regarding the descriptions and attributes of Allah, those things that exist, those things that are present, are more than the negations with regards to the Quran and Sunnah.
هم يقول لا املأ السماوات والأرض وما بينهما من النفي فيما تصف الله به ولكن لا تثبت له صفة واحدة.
They say no, this group, they say no, the things between the heavens and the earth, it is filled with negation. But when it comes to Allah Ta'ala, we do not affirm for Him anything. That's this other group.
عرفتم؟ هؤلاء يصفون الله تعالى بالسلوك دون الإثبات.
So he says, do you understand? This group, they came along and they only describe Allah with negation. They do not describe Allah with affirmation.
طيب قيل لهم إن الله قال سميع عن نفس السميع.
He says, it is said to them that Allah describes Himself, that He is Sami'un Basir. He is the all-hearer, the all-seer.
بصير إلى آخره. قالوا هذا من باب الإضافات.
They say, replying to this, that this is from the avenue of connecting something to something. Babul idafat, attributing something to something.
يعني نسب إليه السمع لا لأنه متصف به ولكن لأن له مسموعا مخلوقا يسمع.
He says, they say that when Allah mentions He is the all-hearer, the all-seer, they say this is from the chapter or the avenue of idafat, attributing something to Allah, not from the avenue that Allah is described with it, but rather He has a description of hearing that is created. Once again, translator's note, Imam Uthaymeen is explaining the falsehood and the misguidance of those deviant groups.
فهو من باب الإضافات.
So they say this, Allah mentioning these descriptions here, is from the avenue of idafat, Allah attributing things to Himself.
فسميع يعني ليس له سمع لكن له مسموع.
They say, where Allah says He is Sami', the all-hearer, they say meaning not that He hears, but that He has masmu', something that is heard.
أو طائفتان قالوا هذه الأوصاف لمخلوقاته.
And then another group, they describe these attributes of Allah. They say, no, these are not attributes of Allah, they are attributes of creation.
وليست له.
And they do not belong to Allah.
لمخلوقاته وليست له.
They belong to the creation, but not to Allah.
أما هو لا يثبت له صفة.
But when it comes to Allah, according to these deviant groups, that the description of hearing is not attributed to Allah.
جاء قوم دون هؤلاء.
And then another group came on the scene. Not this group that we just mentioned.
فأثبتوا الأسماء دون الصفات.
So this other group, they came on the scene, and they are in reverse. They're the opposite. They affirm for Allah affirmation, and they deny for Allah negation.
أثبتوا الأسماء دون الصفات.
So, طيب, عفوا. He says, translator's correction. This third group comes on the scene, and they أثبت لله تعالى أسماء دون صفات. They affirm for Allah names, but they do not accept that Allah has descriptions.
وهذا أخذ به المعتزلة.
And this was adopted by the Mu'tazila.
أثبتوا أسماء الله.
They affirm the names of Allah.
إن الله سميع بصير قدير عليم حكيم إلى آخره.
They say Allah is the all-hearer, Allah is the all-seer, Allah is the all-powerful, Allah is the all-knower, Allah is the all-wise, to the end.
لكن ليس له صفة.
They say, however, He doesn't have any attributes. Translator's note, he mentioned this was adopted by the Mu'tazila. They affirm for Allah names, but they negate for Allah descriptions and attributes.
أبدا. ما له صفة أبدا.
So they say Allah has no descriptions at all.
سميع. وش معنى السميع؟ ها؟ وش معنى السميع؟
Then the Imam Uthaymeen, he's asking the Jama'ah, the students in his gathering, what does it mean Allah is Sami'? What does it mean Sami'? He says, generally speaking, what's the meaning of Sami'? And you hear the students, they throw out questions or answers. The Shaykh says, what is the meaning of hearing?
الأصل يعني في اللغة العربية.
He says, originally in the Arabic language, what does it mean Sami'?
سميع له سمع.
He says, it means that he possesses hearing. It means Allah, he possesses hearing.
قالوا هم لا. قل سميع بلا سمع.
So this group comes on the scene, the Mu'tazila. They say no. They say Allah is the all-hearing, but he does not hear. Allah is the all-seer, but he does not see.
بصير بلا بصر. عليم بلا علم.
They say he is the all-seer without seeing, without vision. That he is the all-powerful without having might.
حكيم بلا حكمة.
They say he is the all-wise without having wisdom.
مثل ما نقول نحن الآن وزير بلا وزارة.
He says, like if we were to say nowadays that it is a ministry without the people who are under him. The wazir without the wuzara.
طيب. شوفوا والعياذ بالله. هؤلاء يدعون أنهم عقلاء.
He says, you see how this becomes, and we seek refuge with Allah Ta'ala from this.
يدعون أنهم عقلاء.
So these individuals, they claim that they have intelligence. They claim that.
طيب. هؤلاء أهون من الأولين ولا لا؟
He says, this group here, are they more astray than the earlier groups or not? And then the student says, yes, they are more misguided.
أهون. جاءت طائفة رابعة قالت لا نثبت له الاسم حقيقة ونثبت له صفات معددة معينة دل عليه العقل.
So then a fourth group comes on the scene. This fourth group, they affirm for Allah names. And they say these names have a reality. And they affirm for Allah some descriptions. Not all, some of Allah's descriptions they accept. The ones that the mind can understand, they accept.
وننكر الباقي.
But the remaining descriptions and attributes, they deny.
طيب. ماذا تثبتون له؟
So he says, therefore, what do they affirm for Allah?
قالوا نثبت له 7 صفات فقط.
They say, we affirm for Allah 7 صفات, 7 descriptions. 7 descriptions only.
نعم. والباقي ننكره.
And the remaining descriptions of Allah, they negate.
ننكره تحريفا لا تكذيبا لأنهم لو أنكروه تكذيبا كفروا.
He says, they deny them تحريفا ليس تكذيبا. He says they deny them by changing their meanings. They don't deny them disbelieving in them, Because if they deny them, negating them completely, disbelieving in them completely, they become disbelievers. They know that.
لكن ينكرونه تحريفا وهو ما يدعون أنه تأويل.
So they negate these descriptions by tahrifan, by changing the actual wording of them. And they claim that what they're doing is called ta'wil. They claim, no, we're giving the explanation of them. But in reality, they're changing and altering them.
طيب. الصفات السبع هي مجموعة في قوله.
So the 7 descriptions that they accept, they are gathered together in the following statement.
له الحياة والكلام والبصر سمع إرادة وعلم واقتدار.
So they say the 7 descriptions that they affirm for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are gathered together in this following statement. له حياة والكلام والبصر. That for him, meaning Allah, is haya, a life, al-kalam, speech, wal-basar, and vision, sam'un, wadrakatun, wa-ilmun, waqtadar, and hearing, and desire or will, knowledge, and decree. Waqtadar, knowledge and power.
الحياة والكلام والسمع والبصر إيش بعد؟ والعلم والكلام والقدرة.
So he repeats them again. He says, what are the 7 again? Life, speech, and basar, and vision, sam'un, hearing, knowledge, desire or will, and power.
الإرادة والقدرة. الإرادة والقدرة 7 صفات والباقي لا نثبته.
So the remaining attributes, they negate them. They only accept 7 descriptions for Allah.
نعم. له الحياة والكلام والبصر سمع إرادة وعلم واقتدر.
So he mentions it a 3rd time.
هذه نثبتها والباقي لا نثبته.
He says, so these descriptions, they affirm for Allah, but the remaining descriptions, they negate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa na'udhu billah. And we seek refuge with Allah ta'ala from this.
ليش؟ قال لأن العقل دل عليه وبقية الصفات ما دل عليه العقل.
He says, why is this? They say these 7 descriptions, the mind points to them. Your mind points to them. The remaining attributes, the mind, the understand, the rationale does not point to them. So they reject them.
نثبت ما دل عليه العقل وننكر ما لم يدل عليه العقل.
So they affirm what the rationale, what the mind points to, and they negate those things that the mind does not point to.
وهؤلاء الأشاعرة آمنوا بالبعض وأنكروا البعض.
So these individuals, who are they? They are Asha'ira. Those Asha'ira, those who follow, translators note, they follow the way of Abu Hasan Ash'ari, not the belief that he died upon. Because the people of the Sunnah believe that he repented and he came back to the correct methodology of the people of the Sunnah. So they are known today as Ash'ira. They affirm, they believe in some of Allah's attributes and they deny some of Allah's attributes. طيب نكتفي بهذا. We'll stop here يا إخوان. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.